You've felt it before. That flicker of connection. The smile that feels perfectly timed. The words that seem to echo the exact thought you've never told anyone. It feels warm, safe, even magical. But there's an undertone. A whisper in the background you can't quite hear until it's too late. This is not ordinary charm. This is not coincidence. This is precision. The world has always taught us to fear the obvious predators, the loud narcissists, the cold manipulators, the ones who take by force. But what if the most dangerous personality type is not the brute, but the one who understands you? What if the real power doesn't come from intimidation or control, but from connection? This is the psychology of the Dark Empath. Not someone who runs from emotion, but someone who has mastered it. Not someone who manipulates with rage, but someone who rearranges your mind with silence. And here's the truth. This is not just about them. This is about you. Because in a world that feeds on the sensitive, the kind, and the open-hearted, you will either learn to protect yourself with the tools of the Dark Empath, or you will be consumed by those who already have. The Dark Empath does not chase. They draw you in. They speak your language, reflect your wounds, and become the mirror you didn't know you needed. They offer comfort, safety, understanding, while quietly reshaping the way you see yourself. By the time you notice something's off, the velvet cage is already closed. And the terrifying part? You don't even resist, because it feels so soft, so tailored, so safe. Unlike narcissists, they are not careless. Unlike manipulators, they are not obvious. They are colder, sharper, because they see you fully and still choose to use what they know. This isn't about cruelty. It's about clarity. But let's step back. Where does this archetype come from? How does someone transform from a deeply sensitive, open-hearted soul into a presence that unsettles, disarms, and dominates silently? It begins with pain. Real, repeated, unrelenting pain. You gave too much. You forgave too quickly. You listened too deeply. You sacrificed too often. And in return, you were drained, betrayed, abandoned. Not always by enemies, sometimes by friends, sometimes by lovers, sometimes by family. And the realization hits like thunder. In this world, kindness is often mistaken for weakness. Sensitivity is treated like a disease. Empathy, without discipline, becomes a blade that only cuts you. So the transformation begins. Not overnight, but slowly. The heart that bled too easily begins to clot. The voice that explained endlessly begins to quiet. The mind that once pleaded to be understood begins to observe instead. And eventually, empathy is no longer a liability. It becomes armor. It becomes strategy. It becomes survival. The Dark Empath doesn't fight with noise. They fight with silence. They don't argue. They vanish. They don't demand closure. They close the chapter themselves. They don't warn you. They simply walk away, and the absence speaks louder than any words. This silence is not weakness. It is weaponized clarity. Because here's what the world never tells you. Most people are addicted to noise. They crave validation, attention, reaction. They want to provoke you, to pull you into their storm. But when you refuse to react, when you refuse to explain, when you simply see through them without engaging, that is when the power shifts. You are no longer a puppet in their play. You are the audience watching them reveal their own flaws, their own lies, their own insecurities. That's the essence of the Dark Empath. To observe, absorb, and adapt without bleeding for people who would never bleed for you. Most people cannot read silence. They cannot stand someone they cannot label, cannot manipulate, cannot guilt into submission. So they call the Dark Empath cold. They call them arrogant. They call them selfish. But the truth is much simpler. The Dark Empath has stopped giving access to those who only came to take. And in that shift, in that moment of selective empathy, where only the deserving are allowed in, lies their terrifying power. Because nothing unsettles the world more than someone who feels everything, sees everything, and still refuses to be controlled by it. This series, this hour, is not a warning. It's an initiation. Because if you've ever felt like your kindness was used against you, if you've ever felt like your empathy was treated like weakness, if you've ever been drained by people you tried to save, then you already stand at the doorway of transformation. This is where sensitivity hardens into strategy. This is where wounds turn into wisdom. This is where empathy becomes not a weakness, but your sharpest weapon. The Dark Empath is not born from malice. They are forged in fire. They rise not to dominate, but to survive. And if you've ever whispered to yourself, "Never again," then you already know. This path is yours too. Welcome to Part 1. The seduction, the velvet cage, and the awakening of the most dangerous personality type in the world. Imagine a person who smiles at you warmly, who nods as you share your struggles, who seems to get you better than anyone else. Now imagine discovering, months or even years later, that this very same person was using every single detail you revealed, every weakness, every fear, every insecurity, not to help you, but to control you. That is the terrifying power of the Dark Empath. Unlike the narcissist, who often exposes themselves through arrogance or cruelty, the Dark Empath operates from the shadows of charm. Their empathy isn't missing, it's distorted. Instead of using emotional intelligence to uplift others, they weaponize it. Think about it. A narcissist might shout, belittle, or demand. You see them coming. But the Dark Empath? They don't attack you directly. Instead, they study you. They learn the tone of your voice when you're unsure. They notice the slight hesitation in your body when you're afraid. They catalog the stories you tell about your past, your heartbreaks, your regrets, your hidden guilt. And then, like a master chess player, they begin positioning their moves. They don't strike with blunt force. They lead you gently, almost invisibly, into making the choices they want. The first tool in their arsenal is what psychologists call mirroring. The Dark Empath reflects back your own emotions so perfectly, you start to feel like you found your soulmate. If you're angry at someone, they nod with fire in their eyes. If you're grieving, they sigh and shake their head with just the right amount of sorrow. If you're excited, they match your enthusiasm almost too well. It feels magical. But here's the trick. They aren't actually sharing your feelings. They're collecting data. Every reaction they mirror back at you is stored in their mind, like ammunition for later. Picture this. Every time you confide in them, every confession, every vulnerable truth you share, is being written down in a mental ledger. At first, it seems like safety. You think, finally, someone who listens. Finally, someone who cares. But the Dark Empath is not listening to heal you. They're listening to map you. They know which buttons make you angry. They know which memories bring you shame. They know which insecurities make you question yourself. And they will never forget. This ledger becomes their secret weapon, an invisible file they can pull from at any moment to destabilize you, guilt-trip you, or subtly steer you back into their control. Another tool the Dark Empath uses is selective validation. They don't shower you with constant praise like a love-bombing narcissist. That would be too obvious. Instead, they carefully choose moments when you're most vulnerable, when you doubt yourself, when you're at a low point, and that's when they give you exactly what you crave: reassurance. They tell you, you're stronger than you think. They say, I understand you, nobody else does. They whisper, you're safe with me. And you believe them, because in those moments, it feels real. But make no mistake, this validation is conditional. It's bait. They use it to draw you closer, to deepen your dependency, to make you crave their approval more and more until you begin to silence your own instincts in order to keep their support. Here's the paradox. They are empathic. They do feel what others feel. But instead of compassion, they attach cold calculation to it. It's as if they've split empathy into two halves: the sensitivity to read emotions, and the ruthless choice to use them as weapons. This is why they are more dangerous than the classic narcissist, because a narcissist pushes people away with cruelty. But the dark empath pulls people in with kindness, only to tighten the leash when you least expect it. Think about the manipulative friend who always seems supportive until suddenly you notice your choices aren't really yours anymore. You stop hanging out with certain people because they subtly suggested those friends don't really respect you. You start doubting your abilities because they often remind you of your past mistakes, always in a gentle, almost caring tone. You begin relying on them for every decision because somehow they always know what's best. That is the dark empath's trap. They don't dominate you with power. They guide you with invisible strings disguised as care. Here's the cruelest part. When you finally realize you're trapped, it's often too late. Why? Because your mind has been trained to associate them with safety. They're the one who comforted you. They're the one who listened when no one else did. They're the one who seemed to protect you from the world. And so even when you start noticing the manipulation, you feel guilty pulling away. You feel like you're betraying the one person who understood you. This is the genius of their disguise. They don't just hide behind empathy. They become your safe place while secretly building the walls of your cage. So what do we learn from this? That not every empath is good. That empathy, when corrupted, can become one of the most dangerous tools of control. And that the people who seem to understand us the most may sometimes be the ones we should question the hardest. In the next part, we're going to dive even deeper into the psychological tactics the dark empath uses once they've gained your trust. From subtle guilt trips to calculated withdrawal to invisible domination, you'll learn exactly how their game unfolds, step by step. Because to protect yourself, you must first see the game clearly. You made them your safe place. They listened. They reflected. They fit into your life like a missing puzzle piece. Now the real work begins, but not the work you expected. Once a dark empath has your trust, they do not need fireworks. They run a slow, surgical operation. They use tiny, precise moves that rearrange your world without ever appearing violent. This is the playbook. Learn it, recognize it, because once you name the tactics, they lose some of their power. First, they pace you. They move at your speed. They echo your words. They meet you in your pain. This is the pacing stage you feel seen, heard, and validated. Then, subtly, they begin to lead. A sentence here, a suggestion there, nothing harsh, nothing obvious. You should consider. You might be happier if. People like that usually. The phrase is soft. The influence is strong. Because you already trust them, their ideas feel like your own. Pacing builds rapport. Leading rewires your choices. They don't overwhelm you with constant praise. That would make the pattern obvious. Instead, they give you just enough validation to keep you returning. A compliment on a hard day. A show of support when you're alone. A reassuring text after you've been anxious. But the praise is sporadic. It's sandwiched between silences and small slights. This creates craving. Your brain starts chasing approval like a drug. You begin to shape your behavior to chase those rare high moments. That hunger keeps you tethered. Every confession becomes a data point. Every fear, a coordinate on a map. When you least expect it, that ledger is opened not with a shout, but with a cut so small you barely bleed. A passing reminder of a mistake. A comparison delivered like a concern. A gentle nudge that feeds doubt. They never have to attack outright. when they can simply remind you of your own weaknesses framed as caring. It's cruelty wrapped in tenderness. They will sometimes bring a third person into the picture, not always, obviously. A story about a friend who did the same thing. A casual reference to someone else's opinion. A compliment delivered by proxy. Triangulation creates insecurity. You begin to question your place in circles, your decisions, even your memory. It pushes you to seek the manipulator's reassurance exactly where they want you. This is subtle. This is quiet. This is terrifying. At first, the contradictions are small. A lost promise, a changed detail. You notice, you bring it up, and they offer plausible, kind explanations. You accept them. You want to believe them. Over time, your sense of reality becomes porous. You start apologizing for things you didn't do. You begin to doubt your instincts. And every time you hesitate, they slide in with calm certainty that makes you feel unstable for doubting them. Gaslighting isn't dramatic. It's incremental. It's 1,000 tiny edits to your memory and your confidence until you no longer trust your own mind. One day they are intensely present. The next, they are cold and distant. This withdrawal is never random. It is timed, calibrated, and intentional. Why does it work? Because it creates a volatile emotional climate. You oscillate between security and panic. You adapt to please them. You try harder. You explain more. You grovel quietly. Their absence becomes a test. Their return is the reward. You learn to live for that return. They will say the right things at the right time. They will sit with your pain and appear to carry it. But they are not investing for empathy's sake. They are investing in leverage. They will use phrases like, "I know you more than you know yourself. I'll always be here. Only I can help you through this." Those words sound like shelter, but they set up dependency. They make you believe your peace is tied to their presence. They promise things that sound like escape routes. "We'll travel together. I'll help you start over. Someday we'll fix this." Future faking keeps you hopeful. Hope is a tether. You wait for the promised future and, in the waiting, you accept the present toxicity. The promise is currency, never intended to be cashed. They control who sees you and what version of you other people get. They may subtly isolate you from certain relationships. They may persuade you that some friends are toxic or that certain family members don't understand. They don't always force isolation. They engineer it. Once your world shrinks, their influence grows. Parts of your mind become their territory. When cornered, they will claim moral authority. They'll talk about boundaries, growth, responsibility, in a tone that frames your needs as immaturity or selfishness. You're taking things personally. You're not ready for this level. You're the one who's insecure. They flip the script. The life of the manipulator now looks like the moral center. This inversion is disorienting and very effective. After months or years, the mirror they once held to you becomes a mask. They know the words that soothe, the gestures that disarm, the cadence that calms you. They can be perfect in performance. The rest of the room sees nothing. Only you feel the tiny fractures. By the time you recognize the pattern, you've already been conditioned to give them power. The subtlety of their tactics makes exposure messy. People outside the relationship see the kindness. They see the caring. They don't see the ledger. If you're living inside this architecture, you'll notice a creeping uncertainty about your memory, a constant need for approval, an urge to explain yourself, even when nothing needs explaining, a shrinking circle of trusted people, a slow erosion of your spontaneity, a hesitation to trust your gut. It's not dramatic, it's corrosive. It's the slow wearing away of the self. You don't stay because you're weak. You stay because the manipulator builds their cage with things you cannot bear to lose: love, safety, validation, meaning. You stay because leaving feels like stepping into a void that you're afraid to face. You stay because the manipulator trained you to believe you need them to be whole. Understanding this is not blame, it's clarity. This is not a departure guide, it's a survival primer. If you suspect these tactics are happening around you, you can do small, quiet tests that reveal truth. Withhold a small piece of information and see if they react with curiosity or with irritation that feels like judgment. Set a minor boundary and observe whether they accept it calmly or punish you subtly. Ask a neutral question and note whether they redirect or answer honestly. These experiments are small mirrors. They reveal intent without drama. The true cost of this quiet conquest is your sense of sovereignty. It erodes who you are, piece by piece. Decisions are no longer yours. Emotions are policed. Joy becomes conditional. And the person who once loved freely learns to ration themselves in survival mode. That is the real victory of the Dark Empath. Not the conquests they make, but the self they quietly reclaim from you. In the next part, we will go deeper and expose how to spot these tactics in real time, the micro behaviors, phrases, and patterns that give them away immediately. We'll also begin building the blueprint for reclaiming your autonomy and protecting your empathy without becoming hardened or cynical. You are not naive for having trusted. You were human. Now, you will be human with borders. Now, you will be human with clarity. You've now seen how the Dark Empath builds their playbook of control. But here's the challenge. These tactics are so subtle, so carefully disguised, that you might miss them as they happen. So part 4 is about awareness in the moment. How do you catch the tiny cracks in their mask? What are the micro signs that reveal someone is not the safe empath they appear to be? Pay attention to when they show empathy. A genuine empath responds naturally, sometimes clumsily, because real emotion is messy. But the Dark Empath's timing feels uncanny, almost scripted. They cry exactly when you cry. They agree precisely when you're uncertain. They validate at the exact second you're most vulnerable. It feels like fate, but that precision is practice. That perfect synchronization is the mask at work. Facial micro-expressions betray intent. Watch closely. A Dark Empath's smile can be warm, but fleeting like a light switch. Their mouth lifts, but their eyes remain still. You might sense a hollowness behind it, as if they're performing friendliness rather than living it. In contrast, authentic empathy lights the entire face. Eyes soften, brows lift, muscles around the eyes wrinkle naturally. The Dark Empath simulates warmth. The body often forgets to follow. In genuine relationships, when you share your struggles, the other person holds space for you. But with the Dark Empath, watch how quickly the focus shifts back to them. They may start with validation. I understand. That must be hard. But within minutes, they pivot. I've felt the same. You don't know what I went through. It's subtle, but your pain becomes their stage. You walk away feeling like you shared, but somehow you ended up consoling them. Notice what they remember. Real empathy remembers both your triumphs and your struggles. The Dark Empath remembers mostly your weaknesses. They'll recall with stunning detail the mistakes, fears, and failures you've confessed, but your victories, your proudest moments, those often vanish from their memory. This imbalance is not random. It's the silent ledger being built. They will often disguise control inside compliments. You're smarter than your friends. You don't really belong with them. You're so strong, but sometimes you let little things make you weak. You're special, but only I see it. These statements sound flattering, but each carries a hook of criticism or exclusivity. The goal is isolation, dependency, or self-doubt. A real empath doesn't lace poison into praise. After spending time with them, ask yourself, do you feel lighter or do you feel subtly drained? True empathy leaves you with relief, clarity, or peace. Dark empathy often leaves you subtly restless, second-guessing, or oddly tired. This is because their presence requires vigilance. Your subconscious is working overtime to decode the mismatch between their words and their intent. Set a boundary, any boundary, even a small one. With a genuine empath, boundaries are respected, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes with discussion, but ultimately honored. With a dark empath, you'll notice irritation. They sigh. They act hurt. They subtly guilt-trip you for pushing them away. The response is not overt anger. It's a quiet, emotional pushback that makes you reconsider whether the boundary was fair. That's how they train you to lower your walls. Pay attention to their stillness. Most people gesture naturally, shift posture, and move with emotional flow. The dark empath often appears to control gestures precise, posture calculated, eye contact held just a fraction too long. It feels smooth, polished, professional, but not entirely human. That's because they're performing empathy, not embodying it. Listen for exclusivity. They might say, "Other people don't get you the way I do. You're safest with me. I can read you better than anyone." At first, this feels flattering. Who doesn't want to be deeply understood? But it's a warning sign. Genuine empaths encourage you to build wide, healthy connections. Dark empaths want to be the sole source of your emotional validation. Notice how they use silence. When a real empath withdraws, it's usually for self-care or clarity, and they explain it. "I need some time, but I care about you." The dark empath uses silence strategically. They vanish without explanation. They ignore your messages. They create tension by absence. This isn't detachment, it's control. Silence becomes a leash. They speak in grand visions. "We'll build something amazing together. I'll always protect you. I'll never let you down." But watch the actions. They rarely match the scale of the promise. This gap is not forgetfulness. It's the art of keeping you invested in potential while starving you in the present. Finally, trust the body. Often, your mind will rationalize their kindness, but your body will whisper unease. You might feel tense shoulders after conversations, a subtle anxiety before seeing them, a racing heart when they're near. That's your nervous system catching what your conscious mind is trained to overlook. The goal here is not paranoia. Not everyone who mirrors you, withdraws, or praises you conditionally is a dark empath. But awareness creates distance. When you notice these signs stacking together, the perfect empathy, the hollow smile, the selective memory, the draining energy, you're no longer blind. You're watching the mask in real time. And once you see the mask, you cannot unsee it. In the next part, we'll move into the survival blueprint. How to reclaim your power when you've been entangled with a dark empath. How to detach without guilt. How to rebuild trust in yourself so that your empathy remains intact, but your boundaries grow unshakable. Because the answer is not to become cold. The answer is to become clear. We've uncovered the psychology. We've studied the tactics. We've spotted the red flags in real time. Now comes the hardest part, survival. Because once you realize you've been tangled in the web of a dark empath, you face two dangers. The danger of staying entangled and the danger of becoming hardened, bitter, or cold. The goal is not to lose your empathy. The goal is to protect it with boundaries sharper than steel. The first survival law: stop outsourcing your sense of truth. The dark empath thrives by making you question your own mind. Gaslighting corrodes certainty. Validation scarcity keeps you craving their approval. To break free, you must begin trusting your inner compass again. Keep a journal of events and feelings. Writing anchors your memory. When you feel doubt creeping in, return to your written words. They cannot be gaslit. Practice saying, "I don't need their agreement to know my truth." Your voice is enough. Your perception is valid. Reclaim it. A dark empath cannot manipulate what they don't have access to. This doesn't mean cutting them off immediately. Sometimes that's impossible, but it means limiting what they can touch. Share less about your vulnerabilities. Keep your wins private until you trust who hears them. Guard your goals and future plans. Think of your emotional world as a house. For too long, they've had the keys to every room. Now, lock the doors. Give them access only to the hallway. Every empath struggles with this. Boundaries feel like rejection. But here's the truth. A boundary is not cruelty, it's clarity. When you set a boundary, watch carefully. A healthy person respects it. A dark empath tests it. You may hear phrases like, "Why are you being distant? I thought you trusted me. You're not the same anymore." They will frame your boundary as betrayal, but their reaction is proof you needed it. Do not negotiate your peace. The dark empath conditions you with crumbs of validation. To break this cycle, you must stop chasing the crumbs. When they withdraw, do not panic. When they withhold praise, do not perform harder. When they try to guilt trip, stay silent and still. Refuse to dance for scraps. The less you react, the weaker their control becomes. Isolation is their power. Connection is your antidote. Reconnect with old friends, even if awkward at first. Seek mentors, communities, or groups outside their influence. Let multiple people hold pieces of your story so no one person can weaponize it again. The wider your network, the smaller their control. Here's a powerful practice: emotional detachment through ritual. Every time you feel the urge to explain yourself to them, pause. Write the explanation down on paper, but do not send it. Read it out loud once, then burn or shred it. This practice teaches your body to process the need for expression without handing it back to them. You free yourself from the leash of their approval. When you see their tactics, don't react with anger or fear. That feeds the cycle. Instead, shift into the role of the observer. Treat every manipulation attempt like a case study. Ah, that's triangulation. This is calculated withdrawal. That was a compliment-insult fusion. By labeling their behavior, you steal its mystery, and what is named loses half its power. Dark empaths thrive on disorientation, so anchor yourself with daily rituals. Morning affirmations: I decide my value. Breath work or meditation to regulate your nervous system. Small physical routines: walking, journaling, stretching to remind you of control. Anchors keep you steady when their storms try to rock you. When you stop feeding their control, expect resistance. They may intensify their efforts. They may plead, guilt trip, or rage. Some may even pretend to change. This is the danger zone, the moment when many victims fall back in. Prepare yourself mentally. This is the backlash. This is proof my power is returning. The storm is temporary. Your clarity is permanent. The ultimate goal is balance. Don't let the experience turn you cold, suspicious of everyone. That only gives them a lasting victory. Instead, sharpen your empathy into discernment. Empathy plus boundaries equals wisdom. You can still care deeply, still love freely. But now you'll know how to separate genuine empathy from its dark distortion. Survival is not about fighting them on their battlefield. That drains you. Survival is about walking off the battlefield completely into clarity, self-trust, and guarded empathy. Your empathy is not weakness, it is strength, but only when paired with the power to protect it. And now, in Part 6, we will explore the transformation. How to rise stronger after escaping the grip of a dark empath. How to turn the pain into wisdom. And how to become someone who cannot be controlled not because you're cold, but because you're sovereign. This final part will not just be about survival. It will be about evolution. You've made it to the final part of this journey. And here's the truth. It doesn't matter if you've spotted the Black Empath, studied their traits, or even understood their psychology. If you don't know how to protect yourself, and yes, even use some of their tactics, you will always be vulnerable. This last section is about power. Not just their power, but yours. Because if the Black Empath is the most dangerous personality type, then the question is simple. How do I survive? and thrive in a world where they exist. Black empaths thrive on information. Your fears, your desires, your ambitions, the things you can't stop thinking about. The moment you reveal these too soon, you hand them the master key to your psyche. So here's the rule. Slow down disclosure. Let people earn your truth. Drip feed what you share. Observe how they handle small details before you hand over the big ones. Ask yourself, do they honor what I tell them, or do they weaponize it? If it's the latter, you've already spotted the predator before the trap closes. A black empath doesn't just listen. They anchor. That means they'll tie your emotions to their presence so you start to feel like you need them. Maybe they comfort you during a crisis. Maybe they hype you up when you're on top. Maybe they act like they see you in ways no one else ever has. But here's the truth. You can do this for yourself. Learn to self-soothe. Learn to motivate yourself. Learn to reflect deeply without needing someone else's validation. Because once you no longer need their emotional anchor, their control collapses. One of the black empath's favorite weapons is reflection. They mirror your emotions so perfectly, you forget to notice that they have their own agenda. But what happens if you flip the script? Start asking them deeper questions. Start observing when their mask slips. Start catching the inconsistencies in their stories. A manipulator hates being studied. They hate being analyzed. And when you show them that you see them, their advantage begins to vanish. You don't always need to fight. You don't always need to argue. Sometimes, the most devastating move is silence. The black empath thrives on reaction. Your anger, your confusion, your need to prove yourself. Take that away, and they're left shadowboxing. Imagine someone trying to play chess when you refuse to move your piece. They can't advance. They can't manipulate. They can't win. This is why Stoic thinkers, Buddhist monks, and even modern psychologists all agree. Silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. Here's the part most people resist. You don't just protect yourself from black empaths by avoiding them. You protect yourself by learning their game. That means learn emotional intelligence. Learn to mirror when you need to. Learn persuasion, influence, and control, not to abuse others, but to defend yourself. It's like martial arts. A true master doesn't fight to harm. They fight to neutralize danger. The same principle applies here. Take their sharpest weapon, empathy, and sharpen your own. Not distorted empathy, not manipulative empathy, but disciplined empathy. See through people without needing to control them. Understand motives without bending them to your will. That way, you're not just playing defense. You're playing the same game, but with a higher code. Niccolo Machiavelli, the thinker behind all of this, believed that power must be cold, calculated, and manipulative. But here's what he didn't account for. A new type of power. One where awareness itself becomes armor. Yes, the black empath is dangerous. Yes, they can manipulate. Yes, they can infiltrate your life without you noticing. But when you learn to guard your truths, to master your own emotions, to reflect instead of being reflected, to use silence as a weapon, and to absorb their tactics without losing your integrity, then suddenly the most dangerous personality type isn't so dangerous anymore. So let me leave you with this. The black empath may walk among us. They may charm, manipulate, and climb their way into positions of power. But the real danger is not them, it's our blindness. When you open your eyes, when you see the game for what it is, the spell breaks. And from that moment forward, you are no longer the prey. You are the player. If you found this powerful, subscribe, like, and share this message. Because the more people see through the mask, the harder it becomes for the dangerous to hide. Stay sharp, stay aware, stay unshakable. This is how you win.